This is the Leadership Podcast, and we study leaders. This is episode 494, featuring Mark Steffe, President and CEO of First Command Financial Services. Thank you for joining us today. This is Jim Vasilobos, founder of Rafty Advisors, and this is the Leadership Podcast.
Hey everybody, Jan Rutherford here, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for making us a part of your day as we study leaders. And as Jim said, episode 494, that means there are 493 episodes in our catalog that are all evergreen. And if you've got an issue, challenge, problem, I'll bet you we can make a reference to an episode that will help you. We do it all the time, almost every day. And this episode, like so many in the past, is proudly sponsored by Darley. They're trusted by warfighters and firefighters for over 100 years. They're dedicated to equipping our military and first responders with essential tools they need for mission success, from fuel and firefighting pumps to drones and tactical solutions. You can learn more about this incredible company and their people at darley.com. Darley, you serve others, we serve you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Today we have a special guest, Mark Steffe. He's the president and CEO of First Command, bringing over 30 years of financial services leadership. He champions authentic leadership and serves military families through financial empowerment, guiding growth with integrity. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah. In the longer form of the bio, we share something in common. We both went to the University of Illinois, but I read that you graduated with honors. I graduated with the lowest honors.
You still got the diploma, so I think that's the most important thing.
I did.
Or did he?
Or yeah, fair question.
Yeah. It's, I think I did. We've got it somewhere, I'm sure. So, one of the questions we like to ask people is like, what's something about you that's not in the public bio?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I think the number one thing that goes to my head a little bit's in there is between my wife and I, we've got 5 kids. We're a blended family, and they range from 19 to 23, so they're packed in pretty tight. 3 of the 5 are the same age and the same grade, so that probably helped things a little bit. But that is where, when I'm not at work, that's usually where the majority of my time is being spent, either hanging with them, or 2 of them are playing college football. So this is a busy time of year because it seems every weekend there's a game to be had somewhere. So we're typically on the road, which makes the weekends go by pretty quickly, but it's a great excuse to get out and see the kids.
That's pretty awesome. That's cool. It's, that's something that as a parent, I know I enjoyed with both kids, like going to all their games. And, the last day when that ended, it was just, my wife and I were just staring at each other like, it's over. It's over, man.
What are we going to do now?
I was able to, I'm sorry, Jan, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, where do the boys, I'm assuming boys playing football, where do they play?
One's at Arkansas, and one is at a Division III school here, a couple hours south of Fort Worth, University of Mary Hardin Baylor. It was the women's college to Baylor University years and years ago, but since then it's now its own freestanding co-ed university. So
that's awesome.
When they were younger, I got to coach them kind of, kindergarten through 6th grade. And then I always say, then they got to middle school and got real coaches. And so then became more of a spectator. And for the 2 that are remaining, the 2 players, this is both of them, this is their senior year. So trying to soak it in as much as we can, because this might be the end of it.
Yep.
Definitely enjoy that. That's pretty awesome. Speaking of awesome, you had this dream job, working with super ultra high net worth families and in financial services. I mean, that's like the apex. That's where you want to be. And you kind of left that to go lead First Command. Explain your rationale for that. What was it that, drove you to make that change in your life?
It's interesting, right? I mean, it seems like a dream job, and maybe at the time it felt like a dream job. But I think back then I always knew that there was more. And look, don't get me wrong. My time at Payne Weber and then UBS after the merger was great. I worked with great people. We helped a lot of clients, but in my view, we weren't changing clients' lives. At one point, I was leading a group working in the high net worth space. And if you didn't have 10 or more million of investable assets, then that wasn't a client my team was going to work with. But I also thought if you had 30, 40, $50 million when you got to us, you were probably going to be okay financially, right? If we weren't changing people's lives, they were doing pretty well already. Our job was to help, wealthy people get wealthier. And then it was during 2008 and all the financial turmoil that was going on. I actually left UBS and went and spent a year at what was then TIA Cref and is now TIA. And that 1 year often gets overlooked in my bio. What I learned at TIA, first of all, there's a lot of similarities. They're focused on, they've got a niche market, which is teachers. We've got a niche market, which is the military. I think another thing in common is their clients and ours will probably have more money in retirement than they had while they were working. So they may have a better lifestyle in retirement than even when they were employed. But what I really learned there was this focus on mission, a niche market, having a passion for taking care of people and helping people that, when you think of teachers, not a lot of, you don't find a lot of them in the high net worth, ultra high net worth space. And it's not a space that a lot of advisors even really, want to mess around with. They're looking for clients typically with larger dollars. But I realize, how much, and I think of my own family. My family's a blue collar family. My mom, when she worked, was a secretary. My dad is 82 and he's still a mechanic. He's tried to retire 3 times and it's not sticking. So he just goes to work almost every day. And I've seen advisors when I was younger help them, and they're for modest people with a modest lifestyle. They're set up for a really long and successful retirement. I saw that play out at TIA, and I never thought I would leave TIA after a year. It's a great organization, but I got a call and it ended up being an offer I can't refuse. And ultimately, I think that this has become the dream job. I get to, I didn't serve myself, but this is, focusing on serving active duty and veteran military families. This is a way of giving back now, hopefully serving those who serve, paying it forward somewhat. And I think this ended up being the dream job because it gives me a chance to give back to that military community. And I know every day we're changing lives because I get plenty of cards, letters, emails from clients telling us that. And that's certainly for me, the most rewarding part of this job and this career is knowing you've helped people get to a place economically, financially, that they, in most cases, wouldn't have got to on their own.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I'm curious, like, as you made this jump, particularly even to the military families that you're helping, was there anything that kind of stood out to you that surprised you, as you got involved and learned more about, the journey that military families go through financially?
A lot surprised me about the military. Having not served, I think intellectually I understood the military, but you don't really get the context or the depth of that understanding until you're sort of living it every day and even a little bit removed from it. But I'm dealing with military families and the needs of military families every day. It became really clear to me. One, first of all, every service is distinctly different. There's a awesome intra-service rivalry that I love to be able to stand on the sidelines and just watch the folks go at it. But what I learned is how much they sacrifice so that they can put our interests and our safety ahead of their own interests and their own safety, often, frankly, at the detriment of their own family dynamic or family finances, whether it's frequent PCSs, it's permanent change of station. Military families move religiously every 2 to 3 years. They're off to a new duty station somewhere else. Deployments are more frequent now and often extended. So the military member or possibly a dual military family, they're both away from their kids and their family for extended periods of time. The pay is not great. We all know that. Fortunately, Congress has been implementing pay raises the last couple of years, but they do all this and they don't make a whole lot of money. The military spouse unemployment and underemployment is a huge issue because if the military family is moving every 2 to 3 years, oftentimes employers are reluctant to hire a military spouse because they know they'll be leaving within 2 to 3 years. And when you see a military spouse's resume, it's often a collection, kind of a patchwork quilt of jobs that they could get along the way. And we look at two aspects of that. There's unemployment, just frankly not having the job, and the underemployment, which could mean I've got an MBA from a great school, but we're in the middle of nowhere for this duty station. And the only thing available is a Walmart checkout person or a cashier somewhere. And I've got to take the job because my family needs the second income, right? And so that is between 30 and 34% when you combine unemployment and underemployment. The disabilities that these folks come out of the military with, all those things. I think to understand that and to know that our job is hopefully to take one of those concerns off their back, off their shoulders, to put them in a position where we always say no one gets in the military to be wealthy, but they shouldn't have to be poor either. And if we can take that kind of burden off of them so they don't have to worry about finances, whether they're deployed, even when they're back at home, they've got enough to deal with. And if we can take that burden off of them, then I think we're doing a great job.
Yep. You're hitting all the right notes as someone who works with veterans quite a lot. So thank you for what you do. You made me think about way back when I rolled into my officer basic course and had all this credit card debt. And I talked to some financial person. I don't even remember the company, but he told us to consolidate our loans and get a no interest checking account. And as I think back, that was financially life-changing for us. I mean, and I was making, I don't know, 18,000 bucks a year, something like that. But the debt was like $4,000, but that might as well have been 400,000.
Exactly.
But that was, I mean, literally life-changing, life-changing. This guy took the time and, talked to us because back then nobody would talk to you unless you're going to trade on the stock market, you know.
Yep.
We were not buying and selling stocks at that point in our life.
No. And you were active duty, so you get this. I mean,
Yeah, I do.
it's a
Yeah,
real thing.
we have a kid deployed, so
Yeah.
we definitely get it. Let me ask you this, kind of switching gears. Another friend of mine took on a big CEO role right as COVID hit, and you did that. And here's what I think, and I'd be interested in you. I think the first year of COVID was easy because it was crisis. And I think leaders are really good in a crisis because they don't really have to think way ahead. They just get to react every day. And about a year and a half into it, I saw like this big depression. And it was like, holy crap. Now, like my culture became this. And how do I change it now? I mean, because I was just in a crisis and now I've got to actually manage. What was your experience?
Not completely dissimilar. I wouldn't say it was easy, but I do believe it was easier than year two. And it was a whole lot easier than trying to get people to come back to the office. We had to make one decision at the beginning of COVID, is that was send people home or keep them in the office. And we made one decision to do that. To get people back to the office has been a much harder proposition. And I don't say this lightly, but what became an accommodation for concern of people's health and safety became an entitlement. And that whole mentality rolled over. And we're mostly 3 days a week in the office shop, with the officers being here at least 4 days a week. I don't know if we'll expand that. I don't know that we'll ever go back to 5. I don't know that 5 is critical, but I do know there's huge value in giving people together for creativity and collaboration and teamwork and sharing ideas and helping people cross-pollinate information and so on. But year one, it was a lot of that, right? It was crisis, and you're in it every day. And I remember those days when you said we were having literally daily stand-ups every morning and trying to soak in what's the next bit of information, what's the next bit of information. And I remember the day we sent everybody home. It was Friday, March 13th. So Friday the 13th of 2020. And the wild expectations is that we would be gone for, 2 months. Those were the outliers. And for us, for whatever reason, whenever you saw the studies, Fort Worth was a hot spot for COVID activity. It would be top 5 in the country. So we ended up not bringing folks back for 2 full years.
Yeah.
But then you had to learn how to, everybody was like chipping in at first, right? Because as you said, it's a crisis. Everybody's trying to figure it out. How are we going to get through this? but then you've got to figure out a way to lead through that completely different environment. And we're historically whether it's in the field working with clients or here in the home office, we're very much an in-person, roll up your sleeves kind of firm. And when everybody was virtual, it was a lot trickier to keep
Yep.
people engaged, to keep people on the same page, those sorts of things, and get done what we need to get done. We performed well, but you had to think differently and adjust to the environment you were
Yeah.
in because it was black and white versus where we were before.
There was an article a week or so ago that came out and it said, I don't remember all the methodology, but they asked a bunch of IT people, "Hey, we'll give you $200,000 to work 5 days a week, or you can have 150 and work remote." And a majority said they'd take the 150, a
Right.
$50,000 pay cut to work remote. That's how valued it is. Do you think with AI and everything else that we're headed toward like stratas of employees, like you said, officers, you have a core group and they care about the culture, and then you've got support people and that just, it's a job, you know? Do you think, it's a fool's errand trying to make 1,000 people in a company or 10,000 people all, sing kumbaya?
Yeah. I don't think it's a fool's errand to do it. And for me, we're a $500 million in revenue, 600 or 750 home office employees. So I don't have to deal with tens of thousands of employees and try to get them aligned. But when you look at our mission, our stated mission is coaching those who serve in their pursuit of financial security. Our vision is lifelong financial security for our nation's military families. That mission alone tracks people to first commands and it keeps them here. And so we pay competitively, especially for a company of our size. We do lots of other things, but we benefit from a mission that attracts people that want to participate in something bigger than themselves, similar in concept to the military, people to join a cause bigger than themselves. So we have this client-centric focus, this mission that keeps people aligned and keeps our decisions pretty clear. And where I think for us, myself and my leadership team, we've never looked at AI or automation as the way to get rid of a lot of employees.
Right.
We look at it as how do we, you know, get exponential growth at first command and not have to add a bunch of employees. And so I don't think you'll have the strata of employees. What I do think is a lot of the JOB stuff that you mentioned, I think a lot of that gets automated and then we upskill our employees to add value at a higher level than they're able to add now if they're doing a lot of manual tasks and procedures. We actually had a strategy meeting yesterday. We were rolling out our fiscal 26 strategy because ours is a October 1 to September fiscal year like the military, and talked about this. And that was the focus. I remember I shared this. I remember being much younger, a kid, when computers were first coming out. It was like, they're going to put everybody out of a job and computers are going to do everything. And I think AI is clearly here to stay. We're all going to have to adapt to it and it's going to change things significantly. But I don't think it replaces the compassion, the empathy, the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom of humans. So I don't think we need fewer humans. I think we'll need more humans in different jobs and fewer humans in the kind of the manual, tedious stuff.
Yeah. As we're talking about that, I just remember as a freshman on the campus of the University of Illinois, and I was an engineering student. So I had like the most embarrassing thing every freshman engineering student had to do was walk on campus with a T square hanging out of your backpack because we still had to take drafting. And I was the last class that had to take drafting before they introduced CAD. So like I hadn't even graduated and I was already a dinosaur. It worked out okay. But it just reminds me of like, hey, technology is always there. It's always going to be present. There's always going to be something new. AI, when I say this one, is the opportunity to really, cause us to adapt and change faster probably than we had before. And it gets me to kind of like my question for you, Mark, is like, how have you evolved through your career as a leader? And what have been those kind of inflection points? Like, this is like when I really started to, adjust or adapt or improve in certain ways. So, help us understand your journey as a leader.
Yeah, you might want to ask some of my employees if I've really grown or adapted. But I like to think, earlier on in my career, right, I think you get recognized or promoted by the things you do. And then I think there's a kind of a things and then you get to a point where it's not as important what I do or what I know. For me, it's how I lead, how I communicate, how I try to paint a vision, bring people along, hopefully inspire people to be a part of it, want to participate, get some discretionary effort. So I've tried to kind of back myself out of the details and allow the people that are closer to those details, run the business and run their departments. I try to be a good thought partner and be value added without having all of the answers. Try to be really collaborative. I found out that one of the best things I can do is communicate early, often, repeatedly, right? So that we're hopefully reaching every employee and every one of our field force, our advisors, district advisors, their support staff. So they know not just what we're doing and how we're going to do it, but really why are we doing these things in the first place? I think that's a big game changer for me. I read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, several years ago, and that clicked. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I try to kind of follow some of the things that he points out in his book, and the why piece is a big part of that. I think the inflection points, promotions are an easy one, right? To say, look, and I've tried to do that with each significant promotion. Certainly in the 15 years I've been at First Command, I'd say there have been 3 really large promotions. And what I did in each of those is I hired an executive coach. In most cases, it was the same coach for a defined engagement. I really wanted to be thoughtful going into the role. Like, what's expected of me in the new role versus, what was in the old role? And that's the old, kind of Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here, won't get you there kind of thing. So I knew that it wasn't enough just to be who I was in the prior role. I had to show up and be effective in the new role. So I wanted to be thoughtful and deliberate about how am I going to execute the role? How am I going to show up for people in the role? And I wanted to step into that the right way. And so those promotions, the coaching I got, I think were certainly helpful. Still rely on a lot of that now. I think the tough times, I don't know that you learn a ton during, when everything's green and your revenue's going up and profitability's going up and people are happy. But COVID was a game changer. That's for sure. Market volatility hits and you got to figure out, 70% of our revenue is tied to the market. So what do you do in the tough times when maybe the markets aren't going your way? There's a global pandemic. Those big kind of negative inflection points, I think, are the other things where I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing some of this stuff. And I think, we want to dive a little deeper. But before we do that, I just want to make sure everyone knows about our partner, our supporting partner, Darley. They're our sponsor, and they're a family-owned business based in Midwest. They've been a trusted partner to the U.S. military and first responders for over a century. From mission-critical defense equipment to innovative firefighting solutions, Darley ensures our heroes are equipped for success. Learn more about Darley's dedication to excellence at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, Mark. As an executive coach, a lot of times we try to help people figure out what they want. I think a financial advisor probably does something similar.
Yeah.
And what people struggle with that they don't ever really want to admit is time and money. Everybody out there that's raising kids is struggling with, am I spending enough time with the kids? Am I making enough money and providing? And I find especially veterans will come out of the military at some point and they'll say, money's not important to me. Because money was never something that they could negotiate for. And I tell them all the time, when you get out, you will get competitive and money will be important, even if you're not greedy, because it's how people demonstrate your value. And, so I'm wondering, how you go, your team goes about these difficult conversations when it comes to money, because, people don't want to talk about it, but it's always important. And, well, how many vacations do you want to have a year? Do you want to stay at a Motel 6? You want to be at a resort? Um, Like, do you wanna pay for your kids' college? Do you want a new car every 5 years? I mean, how do you go about helping people understand that it's okay to talk about money? It's okay to, have, some degree of money motivation.
Yeah, it a little bit tongue in cheek, and you can tell me if this was your experience too, Jan. But first of all, you find out it's not the service member most of the time, and I mean by 90% of the time that you got to convince. It's it's his or her spouse, because it's the spouses that are usually running the finances. And the first one is be sure you're talking to the person that really makes
Right.
the decisions. Um, but that aside, roughly 80%, we have an advantage in that we have this niche market focused on active duty and veteran families. And about 80% of our advisors are former military or military spouses. We get very, on purpose, we get very, very few advisors from other financial services companies. And so oftentimes our advisors are coming straight out of the military, or they're a military spouse. They retire or separate. We bring them in, train them up, and then, put them back, in connection with the market that they've built while they're active duty. So there's this immediate level of credibility and trust and understanding where our advisors have literally walked in the shoes of the clients they're attempting to serve. So that helps. And I think that the speed of trust increases because of that. Um, but I think, to your point, I think good advisors are a lot like good executive leaders. Is first thing you got to do is build trust, right? And without the basis, everybody knows that, but the basis of every relationship is trust. And so the credibility helps build that trust. You've got to listen, right? You got to be empathetic. You've got to listen to folks, and do your best. We focus a lot on psychological safety at First Command. You've got to create an environment where they feel comfortable sharing this with you, and to help them understand, you know, and a large part of the reason they don't want to talk about money, especially if you got pretty deep in your military career, is that they don't want to admit failure, and they're embarrassed that if my finances are a mess, somehow that's a reflection on me. To me, I always think of it's a reflection on how busy you've been taking care of everybody else. You didn't have the time or the opportunity to really take care of your own personal finances. So I think it's
Yeah.
credibility, it's trust, it's listening. It's creating a safe space where, like, look, I've seen it all before. It's like going to your doctor. I mean, sometimes you go in, you don't really want to share everything, but how can they help you if you're not willing to share what's really going on, what your medical history is? Try to take a similar approach with our clients. Just tell us the truth, and put us in a position to help you, and that's exactly what we'll do.
Yeah, it's great, great lessons for leadership. I mean, it's hard to help people. I mean, as a leader, if you don't know what's really going on with people. I
Yeah,
just got off a coaching call, and I was saying to this person, hey, if you were my direct report, I would be thinking every day, how do I get you to give me your best for 6 hours a day, not 8? Just how could I get? Because this person, like a lot of, I mean, has a lot going on family wise. I mean,
yeah,
we all do.
yep.
And I was thinking, how do you do that? How do you create a safe space? How do you get the trust? And I wonder, do you think it goes back as simple as if I help you get what you want, you'll help me get what I want?
I do. I really do, and we see that, especially the loyalty that the military has. When we do the right things for our clients, they are not shy about telling
Mm.
other people what we've done for them.
Yep.
Uh, we're fortunate. I think of our military advisory board that we formulated back in 2010. We've got 5 retired 3-star generals and admirals that give us the input, and then on the enlisted side, I know it's not an official rank, but we have 5 E10s, which is the colloquially the senior most enlisted people in each of their respective services. And it's a great group of 10 outstanding military veterans
Yeah.
covering all of our 6 services. And a lot of them are clients, and they will tout the impact. They'll tell everybody the impact that First Command and the advisors they've worked with at First Command have had on their family and their finances. We've got clients on that military advisory board that have been there for literally decades. Um, and I see that not only with our military advisory board, but we just had our district advisors in, what most people would call, companies would call, branch managers. Many of them started as clients. They'll tell you. And then I watch our current clients and the referrals they bring in, and the Google My Business reviews that they post, and the things they say about our advisors. So yeah, I think and that's how we approach the business, right? We ultimately want to make a profit, but in most of our discussions, we're not talking about revenue and profitability. We're talking about two things. And these are the two things that matter most to us. How do we serve more military families every year than we already do? And how do we serve them even better than we already do? And those are our two focuses. And our belief is, yeah, we are a for-profit enterprise. We're here to make money and make a profit. But if you take care of your clients and you do the right thing for them, I don't think we're going to have to worry about the profits. I believe those will show up.
Yeah, I
That's
think it's,
very
what's interesting and, not having served, but being pretty involved with a lot of military personnel and organizations over the last, decade or so. I've learned a few things. And one of the things I have learned is that uh, reputation is really important. And, bad news and rumors travel at light speed and, you got to kind of stay ahead of things. So I think it's a challenging environment to maintain quality standards because even the slightest thing gets, communicated very quickly and reputations can be ruined with a very small misstep. So it's not to take anything away from, companies that don't work with veterans, but I think that community's tight enough that like your quality control has to be pretty darn good. Um, how is it that you keep your arms around that reputational, um, you know, brand management and making sure that quality is, super high within this very, very communicative group of people?
yeah. That's a great question. I think, ethically, I think it's our job to do the right things the right way, but our market holds us to that as well, right? Because it is, you think the military is huge. It's not huge. Everyone seems to know each other. Communication flies fast. And our belief is, one large misstep by one person can, really blow up your reputation when you're serving a community this important, this revered, this tight knit. And so it's incumbent upon us to do the right things every day. And I think in terms of quality control, I think one, you start by figuring out, who are you hiring, and it's whether it's field or home office. You have to have people that are aligned with the mission and want to serve the military and do it the right way. But given the fact that a lot of our home office employees in the field are veterans and their military spouses, they're sort of built that way anyway. That high quality control, high level of ethics, compliance, and knock wood is not an issue at First Command, and we never intend to let it be. But I also think there's a like anything, there has to be a tone from the top that says this is how we're going to run our business, and where I just feel I maybe shouldn't say that. Sometimes I think there are maybe some companies in financial services that think we can either be profitable or we can be compliant, and I've never felt that that's an either or decision. I think the answer is always an and. We have to be profitable and we have to be compliant. And I would rather, be dealing with small issues on the front end and cleaning those up, tightening them up, than allow something to become a big issue on the back end where it's far more expensive, not just with money, but in time and in with your reputation. So we don't think we're perfect. We're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to do the right things every day to take care of clients, follow the compliance guidelines. And that allows us to focus all of our time and attention and resources back on those two things I mentioned before, serving more military families and serving them even better than we already do. And we're not wasting time, resources, et cetera, on fixing big problems. To me, that alone just makes good business sense. Um, to do it that way and then reminding ourselves of who we're trying to take care of also keeps us with a pretty sharp eye on quality control. And training's a big part of that as well. Setting expectations, training people to those expectations, holding them accountable to those things, and being able to make the tough decisions if people aren't willing to follow those guidelines. They're literally putting our business at risk, and we've got to take the appropriate action.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the little things that kind of matter. And I think a lot of times just from my small exposure, in the military, it's the little things that matter. And, there's an interesting kind of story. I was invited and I was quite honored to be invited to Great Lakes Naval Base a number of years ago. And we're doing and it was graduation day. So I got to see all the pomp and circumstance. But I got there super early in the morning where they were doing some training for the young recruits that were also planning on going next to Bud School to try and become SEALs. So, I was really curious talking with the instructors and, hey, what's going on? Can you guys tell who's going to make it, who's not going to make it? And, they, threw the question back at me. They're like, okay, Jim, who do you think's going to make it? And, I remember they were running outside. It wasn't in the swim pool section. And they were running outside and there was this guy who just, looked amazing. He looked like a linebacker, leading the pack around the track. I'm like, well, that guy's obviously going to make it. And, the E10, because it was an E10, I was talking to, goes to me, goes, that guy's absolutely not going to make it. And I was like, why? I mean, like, what are you seeing? And he goes,
He was running out front.
well, he was out front, but he goes, watch the way he's moving his hips. His hips move too much. Okay. We've told him this 20 times to stop, to use this time to learn to run right. Because if he doesn't, when he's got 120 pounds on his back and he's in the mountains, he's going to have problems. And so he isn't listening. And we know he's not listening. And so, yeah, he can easily beat the competition today. But when he gets into the real competition that's about to come in front of him, he's not listening, he's not learning, and he won't make it. And I was just so interested in that little detail that, like, was so important for, the kind of job that requires such precision. And I think that really aligns well with what you said, which is, hey, it's the little details that matter.
100%, 100% agree. And Jan can probably, be in special forces. I mean, it's all the little stuff, right? I mean, it's, if you're not paying attention to the little stuff, you're not going to be paying attention to the big stuff. And that little stuff accumulates into big problems.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm smiling because you made me think that, the conversations I seem to have every day about companies, everybody's got great intentions, great ideas, great intentions, people and organization, but lack the discipline to execute. And so you're making me think of that. Um, and I'm wondering, Mark, what do you think of, when you think about leadership and, the people, your direct reports and your number twos that you're trying to groom? What story do you usually tell them that imparts a really good leadership lesson, something that you think makes it memorable?
Yeah, I've got a few. There's one that's a personal favorite, and it's turned into a bit of a catchphrase around here, which makes it a little bit more fun too. But it actually, I've learned a lot from a bunch of different leaders throughout my career. I've tried to kind of be a student of watching people and seeing what kind of impact they have, and maybe borrowing some things and trying to do it in my way. But we talked about the kids earlier, and I've learned a lot coaching sports teams, being on sports teams, and frankly, just watching, right? And there's one, so my oldest son, the 23-year-old, played a lot of baseball when he was younger. And at one point he was a pitcher, and a pretty decent pitcher. I'm probably biased because he's my son, but he was a pretty good pitcher. And what I noticed, though, no matter how good he was or what kind of game he was having, that almost inevitably in any game, there was a time when he couldn't find the strike zone. It was kind of all over the place. And if you have kids or you've ever been to a little league baseball game, inevitably there's a parent or group of parents that will yell in an effort to be helpful. They will yell, "Hey Jack," was my oldest son. "Hey Jack, throw strikes."
Yeah.
Right? And I said to Jack, one time, he was probably about, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, somewhere in that range. I said, "The next time you're pitching, if you hear a parent yell throw strikes, if you take off your glove, tuck it under your arm, look up into the crowd and say, 'No kidding, I'll give you $100.'"
Yeah.
Because the point of that story, he never did it, but the point of that story is Jack understands the concept. He knows what he's trying to do. He's a competitive kid. He wants to win. He wants to throw strikes. He wants to do all the things the right way. If Jack's not throwing strikes, he doesn't need someone to yell at him to throw strikes, even if you're trying to be helpful. What he needs is the coach that's sitting on the bucket of balls at the edge of the dugout to call timeout, walk out to the mound, and help Jack adjust his mechanics and show him how he can do better than he's doing currently. And my analogy to the business world is that's often how we talk to people. Sell more, do better, get more done, be more productive, do this, do that. If you believe that most of your employees want to do all those things and they're not performing at the level you need or want them to, it's not because they don't want to, they don't know how yet. So as a leader, our job is to not just yell throw strikes at our employees. Our job is to get in the game with them, roll up our sleeves, and help them understand how to do better, how to do more, how to be more productive than they already are. And if you're going to sit on the sidelines and just tell them, you're not going to be nearly as effective. You've got to get in there with them and help show them and then they can do it for the next
Yep.
person. So what you
Yeah.
often hear around here is, throw strikes, right? And that's a kind of our catchphrase to say,
Yeah.
maybe we better
Oh,
get
that's
in there and
great.
help them figure it out.
That's a great story. You're making me think of when I recorded courses for LinkedIn. You read in a teleprompter, and it's harder than you think to actually read and not flub up. And when you screw up, those the producer, the director, whoever will say, "You got this." And at a certain point, I said, "Stop saying that. Like, that is not helpful." I mean, what would have been helpful mechanic-wise, what you're saying, is if they said, "Shake it out and then take, like, 5 deep breaths."
Right.
That would have been helpful, not saying, "You got this," because "you got this" means, what are you, a moron? Like, you can't read, two-syllable words? Like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Oh, sorry to all my LinkedIn friends, but I really did hate "You got this."
Yeah, I get it.
Uh,
I get it.
that's great. So Jack's doing good now. He's
Jack's doing great. Yeah,
throwing strikes.
he's throwing strikes. He's actually working in financial services, so he followed dad into financial services, and he's off doing his own thing, and he's killing it. So we're really proud of him.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I think we could probably, Mark, talk for a month straight on coaching youth sports and the lessons learned from that. It was a very rich part of my development as a leader. But I guess we're getting to the end of our time today, and it's been wonderful and it's flown by. Any closing thoughts you have for our listeners out there?
Yeah, I think for First Command, maybe the biggest struggle we have is just, we're not as large, not as well known as some of the other financial services companies that take care of military families, and I think one of our biggest goals is to change all that. We have a big audacious goal, kind of stealing from Jim Collins's book Good to Great, of becoming the personal financial coach of our nation's military families. Doing a lot of things to set ourselves up for that kind of growth and that kind of impact on military families. We're, as you hopefully picked up, we're passionate about taking care of military and veteran families. And as I said a couple of times, our biggest goal is to get to reach more of them, because there's so many that still need our help. The demand is huge. And we want to provide as much supply of that demand as we possibly can. And we want to do the best job we can serving them as long as they're clients.
That is awesome. Mark, we really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and that's all we have for you this week, everybody. We'll include ways for you to communicate and connect with Mark in our show notes. So to make sure to visit us at theleadershippodcast.com. And remember, knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. James Madison.
It's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Podcast. To listen to more shows or to access the books and content discussed on this show, be sure to visit theleadershippodcast.com. The material in this podcast is copyright by Rafti Advisors and Self-Reliant Leadership and must have written approval before commercial application.